This is Deya Direct, and welcome to the Superpower Her podcast, where women of power and women with powerful stories share their testimonies. And here on this show, we like to have conversations, real talk, impactful conversations that take people's lives to the next level. And one interesting topic that we don't cover enough, and we certainly haven't covered here, is dealing with homelessness. But we're dealing with it also from a health perspective. And so today's topic is health is a human right. And when I really begin to look at this topic, it's not a sexy topic. It's not a topic that people are generally talking about. But when I realized that typical homeless family is comprised of single mothers with her 2 young children, and that family homelessness is growing. It's a growing social problem that's affecting families in every state. In fact, nationwide, providers are seeing an increase in homelessness, increased by 85%. And it has a lot to do with affordable housing, issues like domestic violence and drug addiction, and all these things that we may put in one category, but in fact, there's a trickle-down effect that happens. And so when we think about health as a human right, that sounds like a given, except in this country, it seems to be so far away for so many of us. And when you think about conditions that we live in, right, and you think about how a healthy home can contribute to your overall health from a social and emotional perspective, if you're in a safe environment, which is not the case if you're dealing with domestic violence or emotional abuse. But if you are in a healthy environment in your home where the air is clear, as opposed to asbestos or, unfit living conditions, all those are factors. But even greater is the fact that if you don't have a home, how does that impact your ability to be healthy? And so today joining us is Dr. Dora Barilla. She is the Group Vice President, Community Health Investment with Providence St. Health, where she oversees community benefit activities across the health system. She is also the president of H2C Strategies and a senior fellow for the Institute for Health Policy and a fellowship at Loma Linda University Health. And she has been very, very instrumental as it relates to highlighting and partnering around health being a human right. Welcome to the Superpower Her podcast, Dr. Barilla.
Thank you, Deya. It's great to be here. Honored to be having this conversation with you today and to raise awareness around this important issue in our country.
So tell me a little bit more about yourself and your role as Vice President of Community Investment for Providence St. Health.
I am a native of Southern California, so that's important just in terms of the evolution of housing instability. And have been with Providence St. Health for 4 years and oversee as you mentioned, what we call the community benefit portfolio, working with all of our regions. We are we have a 7-state footprint throughout the western part of the United States. Our mission is to serve the poor and the vulnerable. And this is so core to our mission. Not only, are we a healthcare system, but we're a health system. And we're really looking at, in this new crisis of housing instability in our country, how are we leaning into this and thinking about our role as a health system very differently to solve this public health crisis?
I did my own version of trying to describe what the crisis is. Can you enlighten us a little bit more? How much of a crisis is it? And what do you see as the contributing factors?
So, if you look at what we call a point-in-time count, that's where, communities all over the nation go out and try and capture how many people are experiencing homelessness. And it's over, in one of our most recent counts, it was over 550,000 people that we could even identify. Well, 552,000 individuals. And that was just what we could capture in the point-in-time count. That is enormous if you think about the numbers, that this is impacting. And that doesn't include those that are at risk of losing housing. And so if you just couple that with those that you can see as you are in any community, like I said, I live in the LA area. You go in to downtown Los Angeles to see the numbers, not only, just the women, the children, the individuals that are experiencing this will break your heart. And you think, what you asked, one of the questions that you asked is, what's causing this? And it's not that it's one single thing that's causing it. It's really a long history of events that are kind of multiplying. And, those are deeply rooted in poverty. Looking at the housing burden for most metropolitan cities, people just can't afford. There's not a livable wage. You're looking at a lot of mental health, substance use issues, youth that have been in foster care that are transitioning out, and as you mentioned, domestic violence or veterans coming back from war. That this is really this is impacting all of us, and we really must begin to face this collectively. This isn't those people. This is us as a country, as a community. Just living on the streets is not only hard for the individual that's experiencing that, but as a community as a whole. If you think about, just not having access to services and the exposure to, weather elements, infectious disease, this is really a crisis that we have got to address collectively as a community, and not push people away and think we don't want those people in our community. But we really need to address this as a country, not only for healthcare, but cities, local individuals, faith communities, not-for-profit organizations coming together to say, we've got to wrap our arms around what's happening, and we need to address this as a country.
I think what you said is so powerful. It's not those people. And it's really important for us to start to think of it as we are those people, because so many people are just one paycheck away from homelessness. And by that, I mean, not just people who are dealing with, being late on their rent, people who are struggling with their mortgages. Here in Dallas, we recently had a tornado, and people who were well off or thought they were different than those people suddenly found themselves homeless. Or when you look at what's going on in California and the fires, and people suddenly find themselves homeless. And it's amazing how circumstances can literally shift in a moment's time and give you new perspective and cause us, hopefully, to have more empathy, because we recognize that but for the grace of God or any kind of circumstance that we don't anticipate, such as all these things caused by life, global warming, etc., and all the things that you mentioned, there go I, And so I think it's really important to highlight how this happens so that we're not as dismissive.
Absolutely. It can be any one of us. And as evidenced by, just the increase in all of our communities. And you hit on so many of them. It's one paycheck away or one life event away from having this happen. And, for us to dehumanize this in any way, I think is really damaging as a society. And it really is all of us. Because if, just to see a child living on the streets or living in the car, that is not okay. Or seniors that, could no longer afford the rising rents, or seniors that had people invest their money and take advantage of them. I mean, it's just horrendous that could happen to any one of us. And so we really need to wrap our arms around this problem. We cannot look the other way. This is one of those moments in history where we have to say, where's the catalytic transformation? We need to lean into this and make a difference.
Yes. So tell me, how is your program in health system? Why is it so involved? And because you don't normally think about it from a health perspective. And what exactly are you doing to make a difference?
Yeah, so as a health system, we really have many levers, and it is so important, because as you mentioned in your opening, that housing and homelessness are absolutely inextricably connected. The intersections are right in front of us. If you don't have a house or a shelter, you're not going to be healthy. And the illnesses that you experience by living on the streets are significant and exacerbated. So often we see our emergency rooms where people experiencing homelessness are going continually because they have nowhere else to go. Or if they do get sick and they're in the hospital, how are they, where do they go? And so it really is, just core to, and we're seeing this, but it's also core to our mission that, as we're looking at community health and improving overall community health, we can't improve, one of our visions is health for a better world. Well, we can't realize health for a better world when a large portion of our communities are living on the street, not experiencing health. So, what are we doing about that? Multiple things. It's not just one thing, because there wasn't just one thing that caused all of this. So we, as a large system, we often say, how can we be big and small at the same time? So one of the ways that we're, addressing this is lifting up our voice and raising awareness and really humanizing this as something that is impacting us all. Addressing this through advocacy and policy, working with our local communities that don't want to have low-income housing in their communities and say, we really need to have more of this. To work with our, at the federal level, at the state level, and with our counties to say, what are some policies that we need to address? And how can we advocate for sustainable long-term solutions? An emergency shelter is a great thing, but it's not the best thing. It's not a long-term solution. So how can we stop putting Band-Aids on it? So really using our voice, and then really helping with the care coordination, looking at, when people do come in, how are we helping to navigate and ease their way in providing care. So, often they don't have access to primary care and other things that are needed to have full health. Mm-hmm. So helping to navigate the immediate care, working with organizations to provide respite care, partnering with our communities to say, how can we make sure that if someone needs to be discharged from the hospital, how are we making sure that they're in a safe place where they can get care and providing home health care where needed. And then also being a catalytic investor and saying, working with low-income housing to say, how can we provide some bridge funding or some loans to help support some of those investments. We've actually done capital investments with, in Seattle, we've invested in Plymouth Housing, and we were a catalytic investor there where we got other people and other businesses to come in and fund. So, I think really by using multiple levers that we have as a health system, we want to address this. And this is what we're doing now. And we're looking to see how can we do even more? How can we be even better? And what is it that we need to do differently as we're really identifying and understanding the crisis? And how can we partner with business and with other partners in our friends? Because we know we can't do this alone. We know that we need to partner with our communities because it's not something that just the health system alone can deal with.
But how do you encourage communities and businesses to want low-income housing in their communities? I mean, understandably, some people may be challenged by that. What's the conversation that you're having around that? And how do they see that as added value for them? Because ultimately, people are, going to think about what's in it for me, or how is this going to help or hurt my life or my livelihood?
Great question. And, I think it's really one, humanizing it and helping people understand who is living on the streets. Mm-hmm. And I think having people understand that is key to it. I have a daughter who just graduated from college, and again, living in the LA area, she can't find an apartment under $2,000.
Yeah.
So if you think about affordable housing, it's not those people, it's us.
Yeah, I've lived in LA, so I totally understand that plight.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think a lot of businesses would be shocked at how challenged some of their own employees are at finding housing and how close they are to being on the streets. So this is key. And in the Seattle area, you have Amazon and a lot of other Microsoft having employees come up, and the cost of housing is so high that a normal person can't afford it. So this is not something that businesses can ignore, because we need to have healthy communities and a part of having healthy communities is having affordable housing for everyone that lives in a community.
So when we talk about health is a human right, that's a big slogan that can cover a lot of things. I would imagine that as a human right, that goes beyond homelessness. What is the goal of this campaign overall?
Well, so, it's really core to our mission. If you look at health as a human right, that it's something that is really for all of us. It's not just something for certain individuals. It's a profound statement. And that really is a part of our campaign to say that we're here as, our mission and our vision is to ensure that everyone has the right to health. And that just doesn't include access to health care, but that includes living in a healthy community where, you have a house, where you have food, where you have the basic social connections, that, it really is a right as an individual to live the best life possible. And that's a pretty inspiring vision. And I think that's something that our own, what we call caregivers, employees, can really lean into. And if you think about just motivating the next generation in terms of what's possible, that doesn't limit us when we think about health as a human right. That takes us to transformative strategies in terms of, thinking about how do we as a health system lean into the future. So that campaign is about really making a statement in terms of what our vision, what our mission, and what we're here for as an organization. And many of our, founders in terms of, the Sisters of Providence and Sisters of St. Joseph started the organizations with that same exact spirit. And I often, I know what personally motivates me is I say I channel that spirit, that why we were started, and thinking of some of the small resources that we had when we first started as an organization and what they were able to do, and to think about being a much larger organization with almost 120,000 employees, and you have a mission and a vision as health as a human right. It makes all things possible. It transformed that mental model in terms of what we do, and that's exciting.
And so the spirit in which the sisters found Providence St. Joseph, is that why you're so passionate about it, or are there other factors that also contribute to that?
I think that really aligns with my personal mission in life and my calling, but also my lived experience. I've seen just, so many people that have been disenfranchised, and it's so painful to see the rising rates of suicides and the drug overdoses and, so much that's happening in our own communities, in our own families. I mean, everybody is being impacted by this. And I have a large family and, grew up in Southern California, seen a lot. And it's heartbreaking. Yeah. And to think that, I also have a 22 and 25-year-old daughter. And, something that I'm really noticing in them is they want to know that people care, and they want to see that people care. And I think this environment of apathy isn't going to take us, or that people don't care and what I do doesn't matter. I think we need to change that narrative. And that's what really drives me, is to say, I can make a difference by caring, because, if nothing else, that'll inspire someone else to care, or someone else in our community to care. And if you think about activating 120,000 employees and, the resources that we have and putting those in, how can that activate a lot of people to care? So that's what really drives me, is just the opportunity to kind of be that pebble in the pond, to make a difference, and to not sit on the sidelines and complain about the challenges in the world, but to lean in and be a part of the solution.
That's powerful. And one can chase 1,000 and two can put 10,000 to flight. In other words, our ability to work together to tackle some of these larger issues. So can you talk to me about who you're partnering with, what some of the solutions that you all have come up with that have been successful so far?
Absolutely. So we have many partners across our 7-state footprint. In Seattle, we're partnering with Plymouth Housing and working with them on long-term supportive housing. 2 of our communities in Spokane and in Portland, we're partnering with the Catholic Charities and working with them on, providing, again, long-term supportive housing, and partnering with them and other partners in the community to make sure that we're solving this as a catalytic, transformational in our communities, not just in isolation. In Orange County, we're partnering with Jamboree Housing, the National Health Foundation, in terms terms of respite care. In Anchorage, Alaska, we have, a full coalition where they're partnering with, multiple agencies that are coming together to have a coalition that is going to end homelessness in Anchorage. So we, regardless of where we are in a community, we're partnering with those that have aligned missions and visions of making a change. So if you see us in a community, you know that, we are partnering with those that want to make a difference.
And so for those of us who aren't in these places that you named, but who are listening and want to learn more, be able to benefit from some of the templates of strategies that you've already created, or to get involved, how do we learn more and get in touch with what's going on over at Providence St. Joseph Health as it relates to homelessness, awareness, and health being a human right?
So we have a wonderful website, psjhealth.org/housing-is-health, psjhealth.org/housing-is-health is our website, where we have the detail of a lot of the work that we're doing around in our footprint, and also sharing a lot of white papers and a lot of information about what's happening in our country. But for those of you that don't live in our footprint, reaching out to your local communities and finding out what's making a difference, or being that voice that when local communities say we don't want the NIMBYism in our backyard, to really find out what is it that you can do in a community to make a difference. How can you begin to address that? Have a conversation. Understand what is causing homelessness. Everybody that is in any of those tents on the street has a story. I always say they were somebody's baby. And they have a story. And I think really listening and hearing that is so important. There is not a lack of opportunities for us to get engaged. So visit our website, have conversations at the dinner table, and talk about this issue, and help bring down a lot of the barriers and the myths, and I think the preconceived notion of who is experiencing homelessness, and make a difference by just lending your ear to learn a little bit more and understand, so that we as a collective country can address this public health crisis and leave our children with a much healthier country than we're experiencing today.
Humanizing who people are and what they're going through. Stories are one of the best ways to do that. And so I'm going to commit to humanizing the conversation by highlighting people who also have been on the other side. And it may surprise you who and what that looks like. And I would just end with saying, now that we're in November, a lot of people do charity work on Thanksgiving and go and feed the homeless. And this year, not only would I encourage you, as I will be doing, to help feed the homeless, but as you said, Dr. Dora, have a conversation, find out the why, find out the story behind their story. And it just knowing that, it humanizes it and it touches your heart in a way that really helps you to prioritize what matters and to recognize that it's small things that you can do every day that won't inconvenience you much at all, but will mean so much to somebody else in the long run. So I am humbled and grateful, not only for this conversation, but for the work that you're doing and for the insight that you've provided to encourage us all to do better. We can all do better.
Thank you for having me today, and thank you for taking the time to elevate this issue. And I love your spirit of gratitude in November, that, knowing that we can solve this. We really can. It's just going to take us leaning in and understanding and having the willingness to do so. So thank you.
So folks, make sure you lean in, type in psjhealth.org/housing is health. That's psjhealth.org/housing is health. Dr. Dora Barilla, you've been great. Thank you so much. We are talking about health is a human right on so many levels. All we got to do is one thing at a time. Remember, baby steps are still steps. This is Deya Direct, and you've been listening to the Superpower Her podcast, where women of power and with powerful stories testify. This has been a story about making a difference. And I believe in you and that you can do just that. Join me, join Providence St. Joseph Health and Dr. Barilla and making a difference in somebody's life today. Till the next time.